Money Isn't Everything. I'm Mary Wisniewski, Cornerstone Advisors Editor-at-Large and host of the show, where we explore early-stage ideas that could shake up financial services if they're not already. Today on the show is Dr. Leda Glyptis, who, among other things, is a former banker. And she helps companies understand how to compete in the digital age, pens a regular column on Fintech futures, is often a keynote speaker at major industry conferences, and most recently published a new book this year called Beyond Resilience. It's peppered with takeaways that are helpful for entrepreneurs, including just how difficult it is for founders at times, like sell your car to make payroll difficult. Here's our conversation. Leda, welcome to Money Isn't Everything. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to be here because we just finally met each other in person, that being the most important thing.
It is so exciting though, when you've been having conversations spanning years with someone and finally they're there. It's like, oh my God, in my head we're friends, but we haven't actually met before.
But we are friends. And you have a new book that's out, which is also part of the link. I'm going to show it for the people who are listening.
Yay.
So I got a copy while I was at the booth, and little backstory there. I got into the Fintech Meetup back room before it was officially open, and I had one of those like neon little shirts that construction people wear. And I was like, "Where are you?"
I was so excited about the construction. I mean, I know this is not the topic, but when I arrived and was trying to get to the booth, they were like, "Oh, we're not done building it yet, so you're going to need a high-vis jacket." And I was like, I'm ready to get into character now. I want a tool belt. I want a hard hat. They were like, no, just high-vis. You're fine. It's like, oh, you're no fun whatsoever.
No fun
whatsoever.
Nothing
going on. If it looked safe, but of course.
Yeah. I know if one had an injury in there, it would be hard to do, but I'm sure anything is possible.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I wanna unpack this book with you because I read it over this weekend, and just had a lot of really interesting, like, specific examples and vignettes and just like messaging of what I think would be effective for any like founder or like bank entrepreneur type to, think about, like, these are like good lessons, good traits to have if trying to build something new. And I even love the little details of like little backstories of like how Sardine's name came from, like, oh, something's fishy here. So I wanna unpack some of these major themes, but just because we mentioned Fintech Meetup already, like what were your impressions of that event, or any, like, were you surprised by anything that happened there other than us in construction gear?
Yeah, well, that was a first for me. So given I've been doing this for as long as I have, everyone's surprised when I say this was my first time in Vegas. But this was my first time in Vegas.
That's right. Yeah.
So that was a lot. There was a lot there.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
And aren't you always like, hey, we're at these casinos with bankers talking about financial health, among other things?
That. So just before coming on this call, I'm in San Francisco at the moment. So the window between me being awake and not busy and my parents back in Greece being awake is very small. So I gave my mom a quick call in between. I was saying to her that I had to walk through a casino to go to a conference where I was there. You came to the booth. I was there with FinScan, a KYC AML solution. And everyone was gambling like they were in some sort of trance, and everyone was smoking indoors. And you know that the world has moved on, because my mother sitting in Greece was like, what? They were smoking indoors? So this was my first time in Vegas, which gives an interesting backdrop. I thought the event was great. And it was really interesting for us both, for me being there with a book recently released in an event that I hadn't done before. And so I was there to catch up with friends old and new, and get my book into people's hands. And also I had an amazing panel, but I was there with FinScan, who's a partner and client of mine, and we're on a mini book tour. I'm with them in San Francisco today. I'm with them in New York later this week. But they were leaning into the meetup quite a lot, obviously, because there's a fantastic opportunity. So them and I had slightly different experiences, and we both walked away going, that was actually great. Intense, but great. So well done to Sanjeev and Gary. Great job.
Yeah, it is. It is very intense, but I think they do pick really important panels. And I know one thing that I can't stop thinking about, because this makes me laugh because of how true it is. It was like the robo-advisors talking about, a design challenge. I always focus on, how do you build product for someone who, doesn't know that much about money, or just does know a lot about money, but doesn't have much about money. How do you get them to use an app? But conversation there was like, how do you design a product for the cocky bro? I was like, good question.
The cocky bro has enough products. Leave them be.
No. And how do you get him to stop? I guess when he loses his money.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know.
there you go.
Yeah. But anyway, but yes. And it also brought your book to me. And what a delight. And congratulations again on having that out in the world. It must be a thrill to see the physical book in people's hands.
It's an amazing feeling. And actually, as you showed to the world, I've gone for an understated, subtle color for the cover.
Yeah, I'll bring it back.
You can actually see it from space. So when people were walking around the concourse carrying it, I was like, this is mine. And it feels amazing. I mean, when my first book was out, I was like, maybe I will get blasé about having the physical artifact out in the world, but not today. And I can tell you that book 2, not blasé yet. I'm still like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And I didn't pick the bright yellow because it's visible from a distance, but it works. So it was actually really nice. I could see people really far away carrying it. And I was like, it's mine.
Yeah, and I want to explore some of the bigger themes, and of course, anything you want to unpack with it. But one thing that came to mind, and I think it's because I listened to a podcast you were on before even reading your book, but it was like this word success. I believe you were talking about how people would like recoil from it. Yeah. So let's make that our starting point of like, why do you think an entrepreneur like doesn't want to be defined as successful necessarily, or why is that word tainted?
Yeah, I think it's I think part of it is the jinx, right? I think people are afraid of the jinx.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting because, as you say, the book is about, do success stories have anything in common? Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted an answer to when I started my research. It was like, we all talk about failure so much. Let's talk about the success stories, because actually they are in a minority, but there is enough of them. So when I started, as you rightly point out, when I started telling people that I wanted to interview them, everyone said yes. And then when I said what the book was about, they were like, oh. And I think there are a few reasons why people recoil from the word success. One is the jinx. Nobody said it, but I absolutely believe it, that when you're an entrepreneur, there is so much of taking your life into your own hands that goes on. So you don't want to like tempt fate, right? So I think there's an element of that. I think the second element is, we always think of success as shiny and pristine and perfect. And most people are like, I'm not done yet. Like, I've done some things, and some of them have worked and some of them haven't, but I'm not done yet. None of what I've done is the complete story, and no story I could tell you would be the complete story. And for every success story I have, the 10 times that we fell flat on our face on the way there. So success feels loaded. Mm-hmm. And that's why one of the things I do early on in the book is like, if we take the sting of perfection out of the word success, and it's like a thing that worked for long enough to stand on its own 2 feet, not a thing that was pristine or worked forever, then actually we have quite a few success stories. It doesn't need to be about perfection. It doesn't need to be the full story. It has to be about getting things over the line, which is hard enough. But it was funny to see everyone going, oh, no, I don't want that word. It feels arrogant. It feels scary.
That's curious to me, because I know plenty of people who would want to be in a book about success, but perhaps they're not founders.
I had immense bias at work when I selected the people who are in the book.
Yes.
Because the reality is, whoever you were talking about earlier, who's designing solutions for the bros, well, the bros are plentiful out there. And I'm sure there are some categories of bro that include some women, right? This is not a gender thing. But there is an arrogant, I stand tall against the world, heroic founder narrative out there. And I just don't buy it. I don't believe it's true. I don't believe it's the full story. I don't believe it's helpful. So I very much avoided those people.
Yeah,
so and you got selection bias here.
And you got I can't remember which founder this was, but or co-founders, and you had mentioned about them like selling their car to keep their business running.
2 people said that. It was Toon van der Dries from Geofine, now Carman Plus, sold his car to make payroll, and Daniela Binatti and her husband of Pismo sold their cars so that they could manage their household expenses and keep their daughters in their school, like the personal sacrifices people make. So, both of these companies, both Geofy and Pismo, have had massive exits, massive exits. And I love the fact that when I spoke to these two people, the stories they wanted to share was about the reality of an entrepreneur. Like, not everyone gets the massive exit to a Dunlop or Visa. Most people will have to make the hard calls of, how am I going to make payroll? Like, how am I going to keep my family going while I'm not taking a salary? And that unglamorous part of the founder life needs to be talked about, because successes are 5%. Challenges is 100%.
Yeah. I think that's, I live in Los Angeles, and it is something that's in common for like celebrities or actors, where it's like you just see the end results and you think it's been like a charmed life, but it is actually pretty dang challenging underneath. Um, I have one segment in the show, and it ties nicely to this. And that's what you said. And this is what you wrote, actually, yeah, which is success for the purposes of this book is the art of not dying. And I think I like that definition, because I think it's especially, well, actually, I might just take it for myself. But
Yeah, do it.
I do think it's especially important when you think about startups, because most startups fail. And so, yeah. So how did you land on that definition of success for this?
So I was an academic before I went into finance, and I worked a lot on transitions, regime transition.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to say that you consider a democracy stable if they've had two changeovers of power and the loser hands over power to the winner without picking up a gun. And my students used to hate that definition. They were like, that's it? That's all? Like, surely you need human rights protected and you need everyone, like, liberty, happiness, and fruit of the loom kind of thing. And it was like, no, you need a working definition that says, yes, it is a functioning democracy if there have been two changeovers of power. Actually, the bar is low enough without it being unhelpful. So it also is helpful because it tells you that a working, functioning democracy can still fail. You're not protected. So I took that and tried to apply it to the business setting of success. What is a definition that doesn't need you to have been successful for 100 years before it says, yeah, that works? And also that doesn't say that if you succeed up until now, you'll succeed forever. Like, we like to talk about the blockbuster moment.
Yeah.
But the reality is Blockbuster was a very successful business for a long time. The fact that they missed their turn doesn't mean that they weren't successful. So I tried to apply that definitions of democracy to the idea of success, a definition that is robust enough to really help you divide between good ideas and something meaningful, but also not something that will require you to be, perfect or keep going profitably for 20 years before you can go, yeah, that works.
Yeah, I found that in your book. Like, I kept feeling like among your themes was like, not linear. This path to success. It's like you're going to be high, you're going to be low, you're going to whatever direction you're going. You're going to have another one come at you sooner than later, probably.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I think especially for the financial services types, this is overwhelming as a thought exercise, right? Like, you want the stability, you want your outlook plan for the whole year of like, these are my meetings, look at me, climb on up. But like, the reality is that's not going to really play out like that in terms of.
No, and it's funny. I had a conversation with someone about the book recently, and he was like, it sounds like you don't want people to become entrepreneurs. Like, it sounds like you're trying to put people off. I'm like, I am. Not because I don't want them to be entrepreneurs, but because I think that we have created a mythology around, like, everyone has a novel in them, everyone has a startup in them. And for many years there was like these corporately funded playgrounds where people could start a startup, and it almost felt like there was a cushion that would catch you, and there isn't. So I don't want to put people off. I don't think we've done ourselves any favors with that narrative of it's going to be great. It's not. It's going to be really, really hard for everyone. And for some, it's going to be great. Some people really have it in them, and those people will go and go again. But I do try to put the others off. I do try to create that moment of, are you sure this is for you?
Yeah, well, you definitely do, because I'm like, there's definitely, it takes someone bold, takes someone with arrogance, but like in a positive way.
You need
Often, not
optimism
always.
for sure.
Yeah.
You need optimism. You need a certain degree of self-belief, which
Hmm.
sometimes can translate into arrogance and sometimes it doesn't. But you definitely need that view of here's a big problem that no one else has tackled. I
Yeah.
will. You need a certain degree of self-confidence to do that. To not be like, no, that's above my pay grade and below my sense of wonder. I will leave it for someone else.
Oh, I love that phrase, below my sense of wonder. I
That
haven't
is
met that yet.
stolen from Gotham. It is not one of mine.
Yeah.
It's from the TV show Gotham.
Well,
It's
it's well said.
a crusty old policeman says that a lot. It's like, I'm not doing that. It's above my pay grade and beneath my sense of wonder. And I was like, yeah, I like that. I'm stealing that. This is now
Oh my
mine.
gosh, I want that in a deck.
Yep, there you go. See? Adding value every day.
Every day. Well, this other thing you brought up of like the entrepreneur, and I think it's really important. And I make this rookie mistake all the time of like indecision. And
Mm,
you argue that like you just actually just deciding anything would be better than like letting indecision carry on and suck up resources and so on. And I guess how did you come to think about like indecision and the problems it actually causes more than, let's say, just waiting to find the perfect answer?
um, I mean, part of it is personality. I'm very so I'm always, I personally struggle with indecision, but I think I came at it from two places. One is, um, I have worked in an entrepreneurial environment in the last few years of my life. I have worked inside startups, although I'm not a founder myself. Um, but most of my career was inside big corporates, where indecision masquerades as optionality,
Mhm.
right? You put a lot of funds and time and energy into keeping your options open, or hedging, or buying you more rope before you need to make a decision. But the reality is, every every time you maintain your sights on 10 options rather than one, the dilution of your execution ability, your resources, your time, is exponential. So I actually saw what was strategy across the industry for a very long time, that optionality play, really eat into resources in a way that we weren't quantifying properly. Because we were talking about what we spent on each thing, but we weren't talking about that dilution of impact. So
Mhm.
that started getting me really thinking about actually organizations that said we're not doing any of that, executed faster on the things they did, even if those things were less ambitious. And so as that was percolating in my head, the other area where this thing of like decide quickly came up is hiring and firing,
Yeah.
which again you tie it to values, and it's like that's not fluffy, that's not cute and loving. So we're talking about culture, and one of the things that people came up, particularly founders, came up with again and again was be decisive about firing. Be extremely decisive. In the case of firing people who are not working out, it's not about optionality as much as giving people time, mostly giving yourself time before you have to make a difficult decision. And
Mhm.
every single one of them talk about having regretted not making the decision in a timely manner, because again, the impact is not in terms of that person and how long it will take you to backfill their position. It's the faith that the company loses in you. It's the toxic effect a bad hire has on team members. And I've done that. I'm guilty of that, as I say in the book, of knowing I had to let go of someone and not doing it because it would cause me other problems. And I have regretted it.
Mhm.
That combination between having seen the industry go down the optionality path and really not gotten any results from it, and having seen leaders, myself included, hesitate when you have to make a difficult decision, it's like if you take a step back, that time that you prevaricate always comes with a very, very high price tag.
Yeah, I have never had to fire someone. Gosh, I hope I never
I
have
have
to.
had to do it quite a few times over the years, and I will say it never gets easy. It never gets easy. Even if you're firing with cause, even if that
Mhm.
person has failed to perform or has behaved poorly, it is a horrible, horrible conversation. But it is a necessary skill for anyone leading, whether it's in a startup or corporate.
Oh, yeah. I can
Lead,
even think of.
you have to do it, right?
Oh, absolutely, and you mentioned that toxic. Yeah, certainly you can hire someone that brings down the whole team just because, um, well, maybe they're a bully or just maybe they're sloppy or, whatever the
Sloppy
case
and
may be.
stroppy. My old boss described someone as sloppy and stroppy, and I was like, why is he still here if you can do that?
I'm not picking up the slack, FYI.
Yeah. It's like, you see it, you called it, do something about it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes in the book is from the CMO of Pension B, Jasper Martin, who says, you have to do something about toxic people because they're like Teflon. Nothing sticks to them, so they stick around.
Oh,
And I was like,
gosh.
oh my God, I know so many people like that. I know so many people like that. This is the perfect quote.
Well, I have two questions, but they take us in different paths. But I think we'll stick to this talent area since we're on it. But it's also in the book you had a section talking about how it's like a different type of talent you're sourcing when you're just like starting the startup versus like when it's more properly funded. Meaning like maybe you don't have air conditioning on in the early days
Yeah.
in the office, and like who does that bring through the door versus like, hey, now you got all these perks. And I'm wondering, through your interviews or just even working through the book, source, going through your notes, were there any like standouts in this or any lessons that would be helpful to someone starting out? Mhm.
So there are three things that really stayed with me. One was with Juan Guerra, the CEO of Revolut Mexico, who I've known for many, many years, and I've known him start a series of businesses. I've seen him go into corporate roles. And as we were talking about the fact that he's going, Revolut is an established business, but at the time when we did the interview, he was applying for a license that he now got. It was a startup setup. And
Mhm.
he said, I've done all sides of this. I now know I'm not a farmer. I like planting things. I don't necessarily need to harvest them forever and tend the field. And that self-awareness is really important because the reality is when you start your career, you'll have certain ideas about what you're good at. They may or may not map out to what you're good at really. And for Juan, looking back at his career and going, you know what, I'm good at starting things. I enjoy starting. That self-awareness is actually really important. So if you're midway through your career, talk to some of your colleagues, talk to some of your old bosses, mentors. You might be surprised by what they tell you you're good at. And it might not be what you think you're good at. I had
Oh,
a
that's an interesting exercise. That would make me nervous because personally, I always want the thing that I'm good at to be the thing that I like doing.
uh,
You know?
I wanted the thing that I'm good at, and I'll go back to your question, but I think
Yeah.
I wanted the thing that I'm good at to be the thing I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
So for me, you didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Bring it on.
Because of my background, because I come from a family where I was the first one to go to university, because I was very bright as a kid, and everyone was like, "Girls need to be pretty. You shouldn't be bright. What are you doing? No one will want to marry you."
Oh.
Being intelligent is so
Mhm.
important. So for me, it's like I'm smart, I'm hardworking, I'm good at this. So I was absolutely heartbroken when one of my first big promotions, my boss at the time told me that my biggest asset is my personality and my energy level. And I was like, "What?" And I was absolutely gutted. I was like, "But I'm so smart." And he was like, "Yeah, yeah. But I'm so good at this." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." But it's the energy. And it was gutting. And I was disappointed. And I was actually quite upset. But as the years pass, I see what he means. Like the thing I'm proud of has everything to do with my journey and where I put in the work. But the thing he sees is the thing that's differentiating in the market.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet he's highlighting that just because in this industry there aren't so many like energetic people
Yeah.
in a daily conversation. I know my energy runs high. I
Yeah,
recently
yeah.
had someone tell me your energy is my payment. I'm like, well, that's great. If only
Oh,
that could
yeah.
be true. If only that could
So
be true for all things.
So I think that conversation is important, right? If you don't know what phase is yours, where you're good at, have that conversation, and it might disappoint you, like it did me, but it will
Yeah.
be useful. Like I don't shy away from it anymore.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna do this too, but you're also getting me reflecting like on my like reviews of some previous jobs. They'd always highlight like my achievement as something I was like, that was the easiest thing in the world for me to do. Why is that on my accomplishment list?
It's not easy for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a big part. The second thing that really stayed with me, something Christian Nenfich said in the interviews, which is the version the version of you that started this company.
Mhm.
So you either have to evolve or step aside, or
True.
both.
Or both.
And then the third piece becomes, who's got your back? Because you
Oh,
may think you're evolving, but you might not be evolving fast enough for the business. Who's got the ability to catch you from the error, to say, you know what, you're not changing fast enough, you'll have blind spots. Where is that support? Where is that mentor? Where is that support network, you need to find them. Then as an extension of that last piece, I'm going back to Jasper Martins, who said, I've had the same job since I started at Pension Bee, the same title, but it's not the same companies. It's not the same job. And I want to see it through, but every phase is a different challenge. Are you evolving in the right way for the business? If yes, you can stay the course. If not, you need support. Or you need to go, I don't like this grown-up bit. I like the early panicky phase where there's mice in the office and no air conditioning and everything needs to be done and everything's on fire, but everything is possible. And there's adrenaline and there's fear. Some people love that. Some people hate that. Playing to your strengths, to what you said earlier, Mary, you want to be good at the thing you're enjoying. Maybe that is the answer for a lot of people, but be honest about the fact that you enjoy it, because everyone's like, we're going to see this through to IPO. And it's like, do you want that?
Yeah.
Like running a listed business is hard and it's a very different mission. Do you want that?
I like these, essentially we're asking existential questions of ourselves and the work that we do. And I think that's really important and hard to answer accurately.
It is, but at the same time, I've been saying this for years to all of my team members. I mean, the reality is we talk about work-life balance, but like, if you find it, call me and I'll come hang out with you.
No, it's usually like a lot of work and then like, okay, now these couple days to reset that.
We work on average, 12-hour days? 10, 12-hour days, mostly. Most of us will work 10, 12-hour days. And
Don't
then
do the math. Don't do the math.
4 or 5 hours over the weekend, right? So you spend more time doing this than you do doing anything else. Friends, loved ones, family, hobbies. Just make it easier on yourself. Especially for us, we are in a privileged part of the market. I know it doesn't always feel like that, but like we're not working down mines. We have choices. And those choices can be about how it feels to show up and do 11, 12 hours a day. It's never going to be easy. And you'll always be like, it's sunny out there. I want to go out and play. But you can actually play to your strength. Like at the end of the day, we're at the well-remunerated creative end of the market. Why not play to our strength? Why not be like, I'm happier when I do that. I'm good at that. So I'm going to combine the two. And my 12 hours a day will still feel like work. Like I don't buy it doesn't feel like it does.
I don't either.
It easier. It will be a bit easier.
It makes it easier. I know when I'm writing something and I really wanted to write, I'm like, yes, I could just never stop this. Well, I would still stop, but it is that
still work, but
it is that thrill. I have to ask you about like having worked at a bank and also talking about change within a bank or a larger corporation. That feels like mission impossible, but like what was your experience like in that?
When you have like 3 thoughts at the same time and you're silent because you don't know which one to let out first.
Yeah.
So let me start with looking at things from where I am now. I would give us all a B minus.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually achieved quite a lot. But we have achieved it in a really inefficient way. So if you ask me about the experience of being in the work, it was mostly frustration. Because when you're in the weeds of doing the work, you're like, we have something really substantial here that we all agreed we're doing. We're getting distracted by fear, insecurity, a policy that was written in the 80s. So actually, let's change the policy about the way we manage our time, and just the fragmentation of attention means that we're not very good at staying with a problem to solve it properly. And in fact, my first book is all about the ways the human element and the process element gets in the way of delivering technology change. Nothing to do with the tech. So if you ask me about the time that I was actually in the job, frustration was my overwhelming emotion, because it's like, if you could give me more than 15 minutes of your time at a time, we can fix this really easily and fix it in a way that is sustainable for the long term. But we just get in our own way and it's fixable. Because we get in our own way, the process has been one of extreme inefficiency. So we've actually made it quite a long way. When I started my career, getting onto cloud was an uphill struggle. Getting an API first infrastructure was a struggle. Actually moving away from data lakes to any data architecture that was queryable. Is that a word? It is now.
It is now, yeah.
Being able to safely, like when I started my career, we had no way of doing a safe POC with a startup, and now I'm on the board of a startup that is on the CA sandbox. So the
Wow.
change of fundamental building blocks in the industry has actually been momentous. It's just we've made it harder on ourselves than it needed to be. So it feels like mission impossible, even though we're making progress. And it requires that willingness to bang your head against a brick wall as a sort of job description, which I find is where we need the biggest change. And I'm hoping that as my generation, getting old now, like me, not you.
Yeah, me too.
My generation is now getting to positions. We're sitting in the big boy table now.
Yeah.
If you're sitting at the big boy table and you remember what it was like, how about you remove the requirement to bang your head against the brick wall? Retain the governance, retain the compliance oversight. We need those things. But we know where actually our fear gets the best of us. So how about we stop doing that?
I like that. It would be great to stop doing that. Well, what about, I mean, one, just two questions left for you. And one of them is just open-ended, but is there any slice of fintech that you're especially excited about or scared about, just let's say in the next month or two?
So over the years, I've always given the same answer whenever I've been asked for predictions. And it is the bits under the bits need to work. And I know plumbing is not anyone's favorite topic, and big organizations like to spend their money where the value can be seen. I wrote a piece a few years back called "I Want My Bling Where I Can See It." People were like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yes, because that's true." So like years ago, I was most excited about the stripes and the plaids, and then I was, very into core. I remain absolutely convinced that we need to get our connectivity right, because in a real world where real-time system to person connectivity is how we operate and how the bad guys operate, actually having robust, scalable, and meaningfully calibrated infrastructure is the most important thing. Maybe you want to do sexy AI stuff at the top end, or you just want to be able to participate in global transactions without having to coordinate all your sort of T plus whatever regimes in the back.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot talk about banking, fintech, AI. We can't talk about any of that without going, okay, pop the hood and let me see what you've got underneath. Because unless these bits can do the sexy things you want at the top without falling over, you have a resilience problem. You don't want a resilience problem in the era of deepfakes. You don't want a resilience problem in the era of quantum computing implementations coming our way. So the only conversation we should be having, particularly with existing institutional players, is put your infrastructure.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you led us to that point, because it's very important and very practical in a meaningful way. And I just have one question left for you, but before that, I just want to congratulate you again on your book. I'll drop where to buy it in the show links. But if anyone wants to reach out to you, is there a best way to thank you?
LinkedIn. I occasionally still visit X, but I'm not very active there these days.
Yeah.
But I'm still there if you want to find me. And yeah, LinkedIn.
I know what you mean. And last question: what's the image on your phone's lock screen?
Oh, it is myself and my boyfriend on the island of Hydra to some.
Oh, that sounds really amazing. Was it?
It's beautiful. It's an island only an hour away from Athens, which is where I'm from, in case people haven't worked that out. It is where Leonard Cohen used to live, and
cool.
it is absolutely stunning because no cars are allowed.
Oh.
So there are no cars on the island other than like one rubbish truck.
Yeah.
And so you see people building, moving building supplies on donkeys. Everyone has to carry their stuff. It's just so quiet, so peaceful stuff.
You know what? That's amazing. I'm from Michigan, and there's one island called Mackinac Island, and no cars there either. And I haven't been there in years, but I'll be going later this year. So,
What's
yeah.
on yours?
What?
What's on your log?
Oh, what's on mine? I paused only because I changed it, but it's always my dog. My Maltipoo Benedict, named after much ado about nothing, but he has his party hat on.
Oh, I love that.
Anyway, thanks again for being on the show. Lovely to reconnect with you. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, one thing I learned is that making a decision, any decision, can be more helpful than wasting time investigating options. And I really need to apply that to my own life. 2 weeks from now, we'll be exploring rethinking value at financial institutions by a perk that might surprise you. See you then.